Hello and welcome to live post-match reaction to the Hurricanes versus the Brumbies. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for having predictions and opinions. So this one, a lot of people predicted was going to be a tight one, but it didn't end up that way. We finished at 43-13 to the Hurricanes, so a winning margin of 30 points. Yes, it was a big one. This one really did blow out on the Brumbies. Initially, the story of the first sort of 10 minutes or so was the Hurricanes basically kicking for position, then giving up a penalty, allowing the Brumbies to play out, and then the Brumbies turning over the ball. And then we switched roles, so we ended up with the Brumbies giving up a penalty and the Hurricanes turning over the ball instead. So they both shared that one, both going both ways. Brumbies then, because they were being asked to play out of their own 22 for a lot of this game, they knocked on by Arnold. It was a really tough ball for him. He was reaching behind himself. Pocock had just put the ball too far behind him. He flips it forward, and Coles collects and runs over. And so from a position where neither side looked like pretty much scoring points because of turnovers, because of penalties, suddenly the Hurricanes go 7-0 up. And that's after about 11 minutes. The next, they struck again pretty quickly. We had a couple of turnovers from the restart, so both sides having an opportunity to attack in that transition piece. But then it comes out to Tia, who had a good game today, and he basically just gave it a little stop and go to stand up his defender and poured on the gas. Gave the ball out to Vince Arso, who was playing on the wing today, and he found Laumapi with a lovely no-look out the back of the hand pass. Laumapi had made a lot of ground because he was inside Tia to start off with, but after that break and then the pass to Arso, we saw Laumapi manage to make ground, loop round on the outside, create that overlap in the extra man. Vince Arso just gave him the ball, and in Laumapi went in for the first of his 3 tries tonight. Yes, he is making a big statement this evening about making pushing for that All Blacks jersey, definitely. That no-look pass from Vince Arso was fantastic. I thought the play was coming back inside, but no, it suddenly we saw. And there were a couple of lovely deft touches like that throughout this game. Tia did another one where he got the ball and quickly offloads to another player wrapping around behind him and forward that time. So we saw the Hurricanes really going into their bag of tricks this evening. And Alex Rickles, the referee, had been off day missing a lot of things. He was dealing with an awful lot of chat from both sides. I don't think either of the teams were helping him much, with lots of chat coming from Pocock, lots of chat coming from Coles. Coles getting warned about it in that first half. If anything, I think the Hurricanes were a bit lucky not to give away a yellow card for the regular infringements during that first half. The Brumbies then got themselves an opportunity, and that's the way rugby is, isn't it? Every team always will have the upper hand, and it's whether they take their points when they have it, really. And we saw the Brumbies do that. They got a penalty on the edge of the 22. Could have easily taken the easy 3 points, but instead they kicked the corner where their line-out, which was functioning extremely well this evening, carried on to went well. We'd already seen Mauls create plenty of ground for the Brumbies. Another one here. Initially, the Hurricanes looked to have held it up, but the Brumbies were very patient with that Maul, changing the angle of attack a couple of times, and over they went for the try in the corner. Having seen that, it was a bit of surprise that when they got a similar opportunity on 28 minutes, this time the penalty was straight out in front. They could have either taken the scrum, which they had the upper hand in all evening. They could have kicked to the sideline where their line-out was working perfectly and their Maul was working well, but no. They took the 3 of that. They took the 3 in front, and instead, at that point, making it 14-8. So they've got themselves right back into it then. Hi, Jay King. So he's asked me to make my thoughts on the Rugby World League and what's supposed to be happening next year. I've already done a video on that. It's exclusively for my Patreons. So if you want to go over to drivingmaul.com patreon.com/drivingmaul, for as little as $1 a month, you can become a Patreon, and you can get access to my video. It's exclusively access for my members. But I have already done a video on that yesterday. So please, if you want to have a look at that, you can go over there and check out patreon.com/drivingmaul. And towards the end of that first half, I mean, in that first half, the Canes were really getting hurt by the penalties they gave up. It was 7-3 on penalties at half time, but it seemed like the Canes' backs were better at the breakdown than their forwards were. It seemed like the forwards were coming in at the side for quite a bit, or getting held, or getting caught for not releasing in the tackle. And then we had a situation where Coles was playing out in the backs. The ball comes out to him. He hits an outside line attacking. And as Alex says, Coles is back to what made him a hooker, or the best hooker in the world a couple of years ago. Did really well. Had Lamapi outside him, again in that winger position. The amount of time we saw Lamapi in the winger position this evening was amazing. So gave him the ball, tackle down the corner there. Big clear out by Dane Coles. Created a gap at the breakdown that TJ Perenara quickly sniped in. He offloads as he get tackled, and in that situation where you've got players where it's all disrupted, players don't stay on their person. They both go for the ball, and that meant that Coles had enough space to dive in the corner, one-handed, to score. Where Barrett missed his only kick of the night. Now, Iwani has been kicking well for the Highlanders, but kicking from the New Zealand teams this season has been pretty poor. So it was funny to see Beauden Barrett, someone who's taken flack for his kicking in the future, kicking so well this evening. He only missed that one out wide there. It was interesting. Yeah, the Canes were very happy to play out of position. So we saw Coles on the left. Ardi Severe was playing out on the right. Again, both of them quite often playing in a kind of midfielder or a centre or even a winger's kind of role out there. Ardi Severe had a great game until he went off, never knowing when he was tackled, always being able to. The amount of work he puts in after the tackle is amazing. He had a really good game this evening. And we did see a different style during that first half of the Canes. Initially, they played it very tight, lots of kicks in behind. That meant the wingers dropped off, which gave a bit more space, and then they started to spin it wide and use their width, which they weren't doing early on. We changed refs at half time due to a side strain, which Alex was probably happy about because he didn't like the referee in the first half. And immediately it was that next 20 minutes where the Canes really took control of this game. We had a holding in the ruck penalty for the Canes, which they put over, and surprisingly they put it over for 3 points there. Stretching out to 22-8. I think it was only a minute into that second half. It's always good to get a score either side of half time. So I think they were thinking, actually, look, let's just get on the board early and get that scoreboard ticking over. Let's get that in the minds of the Brumbies. Let's put some pressure on them. And it worked. We had Ardi making ground after that. But the Brumbies did have their opportunities there as well. Within this next piece, both sides turned it over, and again, TJ was at his sniping best this evening. They went wide again. TJ sniped out the back of the hands for Lamapi, playing on the wing again. It appears he only really sort of stays in that second 5'8" position if it's on first phase. After that, he seems to get out very, very wide. It does Lamapi. Barged through a couple of players who managed to sort of take each other out, and over he went and scored. As Alex says, if Surveyor continues to play like this, Sam Cane's starting spot is under threat. It very much is, but in some ways, just Sam Cane's ability to just his tackling and the amount of work he gets through there is more suited to a starter than to a bench role, and so you wouldn't start Ardi and put Sam on the bench. It just wouldn't be the way around for their styles of play. Bringing on Ardi as an impact player in that second half, the damage he can do is just fantastic. So you might find that actually he starts there instead. Tonight he was playing at 8, which shows that he can play across that back line Can Ardy Surveyor. So we'll see whether he, if maybe he's used in that kind of role as well. That blew it out to 29-8, and yeah, at this point it was pretty much all over. It then got a bit, bit crazy. Lamapi collected an intercept from Proctor and went over and scored. And part of the problem here, it was interesting listening to a podcast that had Laurie Fisher on earlier today, and he was talking about how the Brumbies, for the past 11 or so years, have been a very structured team, and what they've done in this last 2 years is they've deliberately tried to play a much more unstructured style of play. They still work a lot on their line-out mauls. You can see that because it works so well. They dedicate a certain amount of time every single week to practicing that. They will never not practice line-out mauls, and they deliberately choose forwards and have selected forwards who like mauling. They won't bring in a forward who doesn't like mauling, and we can see that in the Brumbies style of play. But what they've also tried to do previously, they had a setup where they knew they would have set plays one after the other, and it would take them to certain places. What we're not seeing, what we're trying to change away from that now, is to be in a situation where the 9, 10, 12, 15 can make the calls, and they'll have the 9. They'll have a group, a pod off that with a man out the back, another pod off that with another man out the back, and the idea is then that they have 3 or 4 options, either going into that pod, playing behind, or playing down the blind side, and the 9, 10, 12, 15 in particular are the guys who make those calls as to which way they're going to go. And what we saw in that second half was basically they started to lose their structures. Last week it worked really well. This week, obviously, when they're under pressure, when they're trying to chase the game, those structures that allow them to play unscripted and have a number of options fell apart, and we saw that kind of intercept try that Proctor to Lamapi gave them. And we saw another one when they broke out from the restart as well, that they nearly went over. So the Brumbies fell apart, unfortunately, but they're still, as Laurie Fisher said, they've spent a year trying to put this entirely brand new way of playing in place. Sometimes it's going to come off, sometimes, like tonight, it's not. But long term, it's the right way for them to be playing. We saw perhaps a bit of a harsh yellow card on Pocock for when he tackled TJ Piranara without the ball. Yes, definitely a penalty, but yellow card was a little harsh, to be fair. But off a line out, it was about 66 minutes until we heard the name of Kieran Drani, for example. So certain players from the Brumbies really didn't get into this game today. Kieran Drani, as I say, being one of those, someone who played really well last weekend, and looked to be getting back to some of his better play, but this weekend just wasn't brought into it. Banks at fullback didn't get used that much either. So Liam Fino, I think, had a bit of a harder night tonight. He went off. Horror took it to the line, freed his arms, managed to offload it to Kieran Drani. Kieran Drani very quick to pass it out wide to Wright, who had come on the wing, and Wright went over to score. Nice attacking move from the backs. Obviously, all the forwards tied up because of the line out at that stage, so it was backs on backs, and they managed to do that on 70 minutes. That was 36-13, and then the Brumbies really started just trying to playing pretty much sevens play to try and get back. Now, with their structures already falling apart, with players coming off the bench who disrupt your shape and your structures as well, that really led to only one thing, and that was Blackwell picking off an intercept and going over for a try. Now, we saw players like Blackwell, Mitchell, getting through a lot of work. And one of the things we've talked about the Hurricanes is they don't have the most heavyweight pack in the world. It's a bit lightweight previously. But those two in that engine room got through a lot of work today. Mitchell, first-year Super Rugby player, someone I got to talk to who was playing for Manawatu in the Minor 10 Cup last season. He's a line-out specialist. And we saw that the Hurricanes line-out worked pretty well tonight. They only had one that they lost. The Brumbies line-out was perfect all evening. Amazingly, they had 18 line-outs this game, which is an absolute crazy number of line-outs in a game. And I noticed my stats have just not refreshed. I say the Brumbies got through a lot of line-outs, 19 out of 19, there we go. They won 19 out of 19 line-outs. They had the upper hand on the scrum. They had a really good set piece today. Turnovers, though, 20 turnovers by the Hurricanes, 19 by the Brumbies. That's a stupid number of turnovers from both sides. Crazy work. Whilst we talked about in that first half penalties hurting the Canes 7-3, it was 6-3. So it ended up being 13-6 penalties. But the problem was those 3 penalties that the Canes gave up were all at the beginning of that second half, which is when when all those 3 penalties in the second half that the Brumbies gave up were all at the beginning of that second half when the Canes ran away with it. It's all going well saying yes, the Hurricanes' discipline was much worse than the Brumbies, but it's also about when you give up those penalties as well, and those 3 really hurt them. As I say, early in that second half, they led to the 3 points that went kicked over. They led to another opportunity, but they actually kicked to the corner as well. So there was those penalties really hurt the Brumbies at the beginning of the second half. But the Hurricanes' discipline and the turnovers are something that's really going to have to be looked at. I mean, turnovers also by the Brumbies. This was a territory game by the Hurricanes, 63% territory, 37% territory to the Brumbies. So the Hurricanes were kicking back a lot into that 22, especially in that first half, a little less so in the second half. And quite often you'll see territory and possession stats being pretty similar. In this, the possession was 56% to 44. So the Hurricanes were happy to let the Brumbies play in their own half and wait for that turnover and then strike quickly, which is how we saw them get their first 2 tries and basically put themselves into the lead. Players who had good games, we've already talked about Dane Coles back to his best, Artie Surveyor in that front pack, the two locks as well. I thought also we had the 7. I've just gone blank for a second. What his name is. Karifi, sorry, also had a good game as well. Up against Pocock, obviously, so some quality opposition there. Running out of time, the next game's going to start, but I thought one person I want to talk about for Fafita. For me, this was not his style. He's been asked to play a style of game that's not his style of game. He would like to be playing out wide like Artie Surveyor was, I think, in that pace. And by playing him tight, we're not really getting the best out of him. On the other side, McCaffrey got through a lot of, was in the wars today. Someone who has done a lot of work for them some good carrying for them in the past. Banks perhaps a bit quieter than usual. Simone also got through a lot of work as well. I want to mention the Hurricanes. Tia is who Alex Lovell wants to have a chat about. Tia had a very good game. Yeah, he attacked. Always looked dangerous with the ball in hand. Always was trying things. And got through a bunch of carries and also was an extra kicking option. So we had both TJ, Bowden Barrett, Proctor and Tia all kicking, which meant that the Brumbies didn't know when they had to come up, when they could go back, because of the different options to when the kicking might happen. It wasn't all off Barrett. So there we go. Good performance by the Hurricanes. Disappointing by the Brumbies, and say this new style of play they're trying to get working clearly just didn't work tonight under that kind of pressure. Hopefully we'll see some better performances from them going forwards. If you're watching the recording, don't forget you can subscribe up there. Down there is a link to my to my Patreon account, which is where you can find that video about the World League that I've done. And over there, will be 2 videos that the artificial intelligence that is on YouTube says you'll adore. So give those videos a look as well. Thanks a lot, and I'm off to watch the Rebels versus the Highlanders, a depleted Highlanders.